Hello and welcome to You People. My name is Roy Koshi. I am your host for this evening. In fact, I'm actually the only host of You People, so if you ever watch this show, I'm the only host, so I don't know why I qualified it by saying that I'm your host for this evening, because I'm the host for every episode of You People. Anyways, what is You People? Who are you people? What do you mean, you people? Well, good questions, all abound. And I will let you figure that out tonight. Well, anyways, folks, let's just jump into it. We have a great show this evening. My guest tonight is the president of the Harlem Ambassador, which is an online publishing and media company. Please help me welcome to the program, Marquis Devereaux. Yes.
Hey, cool.
All right. Welcome.
You people, I've heard that enough in my life, so I can relate.
You people.
I can definitely relate.
So, I mean, like when you've heard the term you people, has it been derogatory or has it been...
Well, you know, the whole Mitt Romney thing and his wife and, hey, we'd like to get more information about you to qualify for the presidency. And his wife says, we've given you people all that you need to know.
Right.
A little isolation going on there.
Right. Well, okay, for the record, this show's not associated with Mitt Romney or any Romneys or any presidential campaign whatsoever. It's just about you people, and I mean that in a good way. So, Marquis Devereaux, you are the president and CEO?
I'm president and chief managing member of the Harlem Ambassador. We're kind of, so when I say I'm the president of the Harlem Ambassador, people say, oh, hey, you're the Harlem Ambassador. Right. I didn't know Harlem had an ambassador. And they start introducing me to their friends as the Harlem Ambassador. But it's important to know that I've created the name of the company on the face of the company. So essentially, I am acting as Harlem's ambassador.
Cool, okay.
For goodwill, tourism, business investment, all that fun stuff.
Okay, so the media and the online publishing you do is geared towards tourism, goodwill, and...
It's geared toward tourism, but here's the interesting thing is that you have all of these entities which talk about, oh, well, go eat at Sylvia's because it's so well known and they've got great chicken and collard greens and Red Rooster is the hottest restaurant right now in New York City. And it's like, okay, enough already. And so the Harlem Ambassador doesn't tell you what you want to hear. The Harlem Ambassador tells you what you need to hear. We give you the good, the not so good. We do it semi-diplomatically, but we kind of do it in a way that we'll tell you something that no one else will say. And so we give you the underlying current.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is there, without putting you on the spot, is there an example you can give me of just true talk from the Harlem Ambassador?
Well, I'm trying. Let me think of something. I should have been prepared for that question.
It's okay.
It's one of those things. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, come up with a place that you know in Harlem. Give me something.
Okay. That chicken and waffles place. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it.
Amy Ruth's.
Amy Ruth's Chicken and Waffles. Yes.
Okay, well, it's interesting because I used to work at Amy Ruth's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked there for about a week, and that didn't last long. So, for example, the Harlem Ambassador is all about giving the insider tip, and I'm an opinionated guy myself.
Sure.
So that's kind of the direction that I went into here. So the Harlem Ambassador would lead you, Amy Ruth's would lead you to think that they're creators of chicken and waffles.
Right.
They're not. Chicken and waffles were created in Harlem some years ago by somebody who needed to create something in between breakfast and dinner.
Right. And
what I can tell you is that Amy Ruth's, it's open 24 hours. The food is good. The service, well, okay. Not as good as the food, but what I will say is that it's one of those things that if you're new to Harlem and you want the whole fried chicken experience, that's where you go.
Okay.
But there are better dining options. But I will say a funny thing. There's a place called Dougie Fresh. By the rapper. And so
is it owned by the rapper?
It's owned by the rapper. He actually opened his takeout restaurant next to the place where chicken and waffles was actually invented, called Wells, in Harlem on 7th Avenue, also known as Adam Clayton Powell. No one does the history lesson in Harlem, so we call it 7th Avenue. And the funny thing about it is that his restaurant is never open. So it's closed, it's open for 3 days, it's closed. So
Right.
when it is open, it's very, very crowded. And that's the place that people go, when they are completely intoxicated or they've bought their substances down the street. And they'll go into Dougie Fresh Chicken and Waffle. So if you want to do it legitimately, you eat at Amy Rule's. If you've been misbehaving earlier in the night, you go to Dougie Fresh Chicken and Waffles.
Provided
if it's open.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing is we won't tell you, we won't give you the whole sugar-coated version. We'll kind of keep it real with you because we think that's a lot more interesting. But we do it with a smile and we do it with a little bit of humor.
Yeah. Well, have you made any enemies in Harlem? Oh, wow.
Being an opinionated black male who is not exactly heterosexual. Enemies? No, absolutely not. What would ever give you that idea? There are people that don't care for the approach. But here's my attitude. Coca-Cola is the real thing, And if you want diet, the light version, you go over there. And if you want ginger ale, the non-version, you go over there. But if you want the real thing, you buy a Coca-Cola and you drink that. And we're going to give you the Coca-Cola.
Okay.
No ice. Drinking it straight. Squeeze a lemon. Might be a little bitter. Always sweet.
Okay. Well, so now are you from Harlem? Were you born and raised in Harlem?
No, I'm actually born in Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that everything that I'm seeing going on in Harlem right now is so we call it gentrification in New York City, but in Boston, we just called it cleaning up the neighborhood. We don't have the same level of investment that Boston may have had some years ago, because this happened like 20, 25 years ago in Roxbury, which is where Malcolm X passed through at one point, where
Right.
Dr. Martin Luther King passed through at one point, and another M, who I can't remember. It could have been Muhammad Ali for all I know.
Right.
Everyone seems to pass through Boston before they get here. Mayor Bloomberg did.
Yeah.
De Blasio came from Cambridge French and Latin.
Okay.
So the Boston and New York have these connections, and me coming to Harlem is kind of like seeing what Roxbury was 25 years ago, and my dad is actually from Roxbury.
Okay.
But my mom is from Boston's upper middle class neighborhood called Back Bay, South End.
So, I mean, you differentiate between the terms gentrification and cleaning up the neighborhood. Like,
Yeah.
you make it sound cleaning up the neighborhood sounds really nice. So, are you pro gentrification?
Here's my attitude. No one wants to walk down the block and step over crack piles and chicken bones.
Sure.
We don't want to see broken glass in the middle of an empty lot. And that's a little bit of what we've seen uptown for a long time. No one wanted to be there. You had a situation of banks redlining. You had businesses that wouldn't touch above 96th Street, wouldn't go near it.
Right.
You could get the check cashing place. You could get, I'm trying to think, you could get a bodega with bulletproof glass.
Yeah.
You could probably get, a loan shark, but you couldn't get the normal businesses that you get in Midtown. The great thing about it now is that even though you couldn't sell Harlem in 2005, in 2015, people are breaking their ankles to get up there. So it's become this new hotspot. And I would say that Harlem is now what Brooklyn was 20 years ago.
But I guess like an issue, and the real reason people get so mad about gentrification is that it does drive up prices. It does drive out residents that have been there for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what do you make of that? And is there a way of cleaning up the neighborhood without driving out people who've been there for generations?
Well, here's my attitude. I just did a community board interview last night. Was it last night or the night before? I can't even remember anymore. It was, I was there for 2.5 hours for a community board interview. We did 3 different scenarios. And there's just some people that just don't belong. You know, even if you're a business owner and you've been there forever, if your business is not serving the community, you don't need to be there. If you are somebody who has grown up in the neighborhood, but you're not contributing anything, it doesn't mean that you need to be there. So the fact of the matter is that you've got to bring something to the table. Either you're bringing a knife and a fork, or you're bringing the turkey, or you're bringing gravy, or you're bringing some apple pie, but you got to bring something to the table. If you're just showing up empty-handed and complaining about what there is to eat, well, then that's no good.
So, I guess I mean that's an interesting viewpoint. I mean I know like a lot of people would see that as controversial a little bit.
It is controversial, yeah.
So so I guess my question would be, it's not enough to be a citizen there, as according to you. Like it's not enough to be a citizen there that like I raise a family here, I pay my taxes here, I don't commit crimes, I don't.
Well, you said some interesting things. So years ago, people thought of Harlem, they thought of crime, they thought of unpaid taxes, they thought of a population that just was kind of stagnant. And in some levels it was. You do have some people that contribute a great deal. You have people that owned homes and owned businesses that moved away. People of color, as a matter of fact. They just kind of gave up on the neighborhood. And that was the intention when a lot of this development happened. Think about it like a tidal wave.
Okay.
If forget it. It's not even a tidal wave, it's a tsunami. If you have a tsunami coming, you can't negotiate with a tsunami.
Sure.
You know it's on its way. So you're going to do one of a couple of things. You're either going to figure an escape route and get the hell out. You're going to build an ark and figure out and take on what you can and ride it out.
Yeah.
You can stand there and get wiped out, or you can say, well, if there's a possibility that I can swim or I can find higher ground, let me do what I can do. So the whole thing about gentrification is that you have to come up with a plan. And the plan doesn't always include you, and so you have to make yourself part of the plan.
Okay.
I am somebody that I don't operate in a lot of those political circles, and so I don't make everybody's top 10 list.
Sure.
But my company employs people of color, and we support micro, small, and mid-sized businesses, preferably of color, but not necessarily. And so,
sure.
That's how do you say no to that? You can't.
No. I mean, like, I guess like that's what I'm getting at is, how do you create those opportunities? Of course, I mean, I think like anyone would agree, like nobody wants their community to be stagnant, and nobody wants their community to move backwards and move into a crime-ridden era. Certainly not. I guess the tsunami, and I understand the tsunami analogy, but these are all people that are doing this to other people, like in terms of like what I'm trying to figure out, and it sounds like, I think you may have answered my question. It sounds like you're trying to do this with your company of like, how do you clean up the neighborhood without cleaning out the neighborhood of people? And I mean, like even if it's somebody who's like, they don't necessarily own a business, they work in Midtown, they have a regular office job, but they raise their family there, and like that's what they can afford. I mean, do they deserve to be driven out because the landlords want to refurbish their apartment building into a condo and drive prices there?
Right, no. And one of the things that I advocate for is I advocate for mixed usage. We use this term in New York, it's kind of a misnomer. We say affordable housing.
Yeah.
Well, it's affordable for who? We have on West 116th Street condos that are worth $2 million, and it's called affordable housing for New Yorkers. And it's like, well, not everybody's shopping at Nordstrom.
Yeah.
Some of us are shopping at Target.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The whole idea is that you want mixed usage. You want commercial and residential. You want middle income, upper income, and lower income. And when you have that diversity, you have more of a shared economic effect. So in other words, our company believes three things are interconnected. It's creativity, commerce, and culture. Commerce is the present. It's where people are spending their money now. Creativity is coming up with the idea, and culture is what you've built in the past.
Right.
And so you need past, present, and future. You have to understand how you can bring that all together in the present.
Right.
And so commerce does not exist without creativity and culture.
Yeah.
Culture doesn't exist without creativity and commerce, and creativity doesn't exist without culture and commerce.
Okay. And so it sounds like, you're not, you're not kind of doing that work of like, well, we're going to put a Starbucks in here. Like you are embracing who's already there in Harlem, at least trying to.
Okay, let's be clear about a couple of things. The McDonald's franchise that is selling the $1 McChicken and giving us the quarter pounders with the extra fat, I don't support that. I don't believe that really has a place in our community. I don't support the liquor stores with the plexiglass cube, putting your money in the box and giving me a $2 nip. I don't support that, and my company doesn't support that. What we do support is we do support businesses that are kind of thinking outside the box. We want people that are bringing positive change. I'm not for the check cashing place. Do I go to a McDonald's? Absolutely. Do I go to a liquor store? Maybe not to get a $2 nip, but I might get myself a bottle of wine. But I have a problem with putting my money into a plexiglass box.
Sure.
I don't feel those things respect our community, and so they don't have a place there. They don't really have a purpose there. We
Right.
need something that's more productive for
Yeah.
growth.
So this is something that, so this is the reason I had Marquis on. We met at a screening of a film called The Throwaways. It was written by Ira McKinley. Not written. It's a documentary film made by Ira McKinley, who is a former homeless man and a former felon, and it's basically about the incarceration rates for black males and how it's affecting the black community at large. And it took place, I believe the film took place in Albany. I don't remember now, but it was like upstate New York, Albany. I believe it's Albany. You can Google it. The Throwaways, Ira McKinley. It's a great film. I really loved it. And so there's a Q&A afterwards when we viewed this film, and I was taken by Marquis' perspectives because a lot of people in the room were sort of saying, you know, and myself included, it was like, well, these are patterns of, like, you know, black men being targeted at a higher proportion for incarceration and how that breaks up the black community. Like, a lot of us were like, yeah, it just keeps happening. It's 2015. Why is it still happening? And I remember, Marquis, you sort of like, you talked a lot about direct action and getting involved in your local government and your city council. So you're bringing up this term mixed usage.
Yeah.
And it
yeah.
sounds great on paper. It's almost
And when I say mixed usage, I mean Harlem is not just a place that you get fried chicken and collard greens.
Absolutely.
That's not who we are. We're not a bunch of black people that are living in a housing project in need of a handout. What we are is we are a diverse community. We're a diverse group of communities. We are East Harlem, West Harlem, Central Harlem, and Harlem Heights, which is known as Washington Heights. We are a group of racially diverse people, economically diverse, and we're educated on all different levels.
Yeah.
And we all bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, and so, like, but I guess with mixed usage, just from an economic standpoint, a class standpoint, like, you're advocating for, like, different, like, classes, like, including a middle class.
Right.
So it's not just like, a bunch of poor people and then, like, a bunch of rich people tsunami in and wipe everyone out, right?
Right.
So
Because communities don't survive like that. A wealthy community does not survive without a staff of people helping to maintain that on some level. Those
Right.
people maintain their wealth by relying on other people to kind of work as their service staff to support them in earning their money. So wealthy people need those that are less wealthy, and those of us that are less wealthy need those with wealth. It has to be an interdependence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you've gotten to the point where some wealthy people just say, pick your straps up, and it's like, well, it doesn't really work like that.
Exactly.
There's more to the story.
That's happening all over the country now.
It is,
Yeah.
but you also have some people that are just, whether they're living in public housing or whether they're living in subsidized housing, that just say, oh, well, where's my check? I didn't get my check. I should get this, this, and this. So there's a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
I'm a registered independent myself, so I don't agree with the Democrats. I find that the Democrats are very needy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with the Republicans because I find that the Republicans are greedy.
Yeah.
So I believe in what is actually going to work in this particular situation that serves the whole group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess, like, what I was trying to, like, get at was that, like, these things sound great on paper. They're almost never implemented in New York City and a lot of the country now. And I guess, like, from hearing you speak on direct action and getting involved in your government, like, can you just speak a little bit more about, like, how do you get mixed usage happening in your community in a healthy way using, say, your local government? It's a big question, I realize.
Yeah. I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little ugly here.
Sure.
Men don't get choked selling loose cigarettes when those men know who the commander of the precinct is personally. Mm-hmm. And guys don't get shot in the street randomly or confronted by police officers when there's a relationship with that police officer. In other words, if a parent goes to a child's school,
mm-hmm.
that child is likely to do well because the teacher knows that he or she will be accountable to the parent.
Right.
And what has happened is that some people have started to give up hope. And so they don't invest their time back into their community. So to create a business that is community-based, that's hiring locally, that's building locally, but marketing globally, well, I think that's actually saying, let me take the resources that are available here and let me put them to work.
Okay.
Let me take the garden that I have and let me plant the seeds in this garden.
Yeah.
And then whatever it is that does grow, let me take that and let me make a meal out of that. And let me take, there's a, what I want to say is a parable called Stone Soup, where one person has carrots and one person has potatoes and one person may have an egg or some chicken, and the original person only put a stone in the water. But the bottom line was that everyone brought in something and eventually they had soup.
Right.
None of them actually had a meal until they all contributed to the soup.
Yeah.
And initially the one person that made the suggestion about the first person said, I'll contribute a stone.
Yeah.
So you actually made a meal from stone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a whole idea. So a lot of us in these underserved communities, we've been left with a stone. And so now it's time for us, you don't get blood from a stone, but what you can do is you can create a soup.
Yes.
As long as you tap your social resources and have people contribute. Everyone has to contribute.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess again, like, I actually don't think that's a very ugly thing to say. What you just now said. I mean,
what is ugly is that there are a lot of people protesting in the streets and they're very, very angry. And so my question, I've actually met Eric Garner's sister at an event, and it was funny because when I was there, it was an event for Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark.
Yes.
And you had some very liberally progressive people that were there, some politicians, and they often identify as Democrat, and they may be more liberal than that. But what it was, she came in and she started speaking to a couple of people. And at one point, I thought, hey, I really want to hear what's going on here. But I bit my tongue because normally I would say something, and then when someone told me, oh, that's his sister, Eric Garner's sister, was sitting there, and I was glad that she was there. And I say that because of the fact that it sometimes, it's not to say that his family wasn't politically or actively involved before, but when that type of tragedy, when you're confronted with that, you're forced to make a hardcore decision. And so now we're in a place where you have to have some type of relationship with your police department. You have to know who is making decisions in your community on your behalf. So for me, I'm a business owner. I go under the GBLTQ banner.
Yeah.
So there is absolutely no way I will allow someone, and being a black male, that I cannot let someone come into my community and make decisions for me without knowing how I feel. And if they won't make my decisions for me, then I will have to get in there myself and let them know what my choices are, or get them out and do it myself.
And when you say letting people into your community, who specifically, like, I mean, the police?
Right.
Who are some other parties that you're speaking of?
Well, I know who the commanding officer is of my precinct.
Right.
I know who the chair is of my community board. I know who my borough president is. I introduce myself to these people. I don't have any children, so I don't necessarily speak with my child's teacher, but I do have enough clout right now in my community that if I walk into a room, the politicians don't know what I say or what I will do, but they know that I'm someone they have to watch. And that's the thing, is you want people aware when you walk into a room so that if they're passive with you, they're not taking you seriously.
Right.
And so what's happened with the Garner situation and with the Michael Brown situation is that, hence the whole Black Lives Matter, is we're not being valued by certain people. And so I've got to let you know that I value myself. And if I let you know that I value me by investing in my community and those like me, then you're going to value me too, because I'm going to hold you accountable.
Right, and I mean, and you're right. I mean, like, and that's a simple thing that people can do. I think it's more simple than people know, but like, I think that unfortunately...
I'm not saying it's easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
It's not easy, because like, actually, like, taking another case, the Tamir Rice case in Ohio, I remember reading, there's a New York Times article about that whole issue and like how that may have happened because of cuts in the police department in Ohio. And like one of the, I can't remember who said this, but somebody was remarking, kind of like what you just now said, like, you know, before these cuts, there would have been a police officer near that park or at that park, just sort of like that was his port.
Yeah.
And he would have been like, "Oh, Tamir, what are you doing? Put the gun away," you know,
Right.
like, or whatever. Like, it wouldn't have like come
Yeah.
to like this situation where like
Right.
some panicked guy who was unstable shoots a child. And so, but like, so that's like, what do you do? I mean, this is like a simple, not easy, but simple step of
Sure.
I'm a citizen here. I'm a valuable member of this community. I'm going to come in and meet you, borough president, meet you, commanding officer. What do you do? And you're seeing this a little bit in the St. Louis municipalities and in Ohio, when it's from the top down, is people saying, "Oh, I don't care if you come in and see me. I'm cutting you off." What do you do then?
It's very difficult.
Not an easy question. I'm sorry.
It's very difficult to ignore someone who is educated, who is involved and actively connected, and who is actively vocal.
Yeah.
You can't ignore somebody like that,
Right.
because when you're dealing with those types of people, if you don't do what you're expected to do, you're going to be called out on it.
Right.
And being called out doesn't mean just verbalizing it. It means, again, taking direct action. I like the fact that this show is called You People, because you have a mentality in a lot of our political circles where there is a schism. Is that the word I'm looking for? There's just a direct separation. And
Yeah.
I am too intelligent to just allow someone to just ignore me.
Right.
You're not going to ignore me. Even if you do ignore me, I'm going to keep showing up, and you're going to keep seeing me, and so you're not going to, and you'll have to deal with me eventually.
Right.
And that's the reason that I created the business, because as a business owner, it gives me some clout. It's showing I'm investing my time here, I'm investing my money here,
Right.
and it's showing that because I have something at stake, I'm not just going to allow this to continue. You
Yeah.
know, with the whole charter school issue,
Yeah.
it should serve a purpose, but the way that it's happening, where you have interests that have nothing to directly do with the community,
Yeah.
coming in and investing monies and trying to compromise teacher salaries, trying to compromise the education system, where you're not teaching a student how to be creative and think for themselves.
Yeah.
You're teaching them to follow the rules.
Right. Yeah.
And the difference between me and everyone else is that I think outside the box. I don't follow the rules. I create an itinerary.
Yeah.
And sometimes, if a situation doesn't fit, I have to step outside of the situation.
Why do so many people not do that? Why do you think people don't do that enough?
Because we're being forced not to value ourselves. The reason why I created the Harlem Ambassador is because Harlem reminded me a lot of myself. Harlem was undervalued. People realized that it had potential, but they had a vision of not including those people of color.
And how long have you lived in Harlem?
I've lived there on and off for 22 years.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of changes. Okay.
Yes, I have. So Harlem represents me. Harlem represents a diverse mosaic. Harlem represents something that may not have the same sheen, but it's because it's like wine. It is aged. It is so, that vintage is so much more tasty. It's
Yeah.
got so much more flavor now. And so creating the Harlem Ambassador was basically saying, let me give you Harlem as it really is. Because the media will give you all of the negative.
Yeah.
But we believe we can give you the good, the not so good, and still let you have an image of Harlem that's fairly positive, and it'll make you curious. And that's the thing about it, is that it's one, when you visit, you're curious to explore more. And I think that some people have lost their sense of value. They've lost the sense of value in the community. And now that the community is being valued again, they're not feeling part of the process, and they've given up. So one of the things that when I started my business is all of these older people of color said to me, whatever you do, don't give up, don't give up. And I can't tell you how many times I threw my hands up in the air and I had to say a prayer, and I had to say, why am I selected for this task? Because this is the hardest thing I ever did in my life. It's like raising a child as a single parent You're not getting your child support payments. You're not getting any help from your landlord. You're not getting help from your teachers, but you still have to raise the kid. And you can't abandon the kid, because if you abandon the kid, you've given up.
Yeah.
So the important thing is not to give up.
I mean, were you raised that way? Did you come from like a stable background? Or
No.
private?
No.
Oh.
I'm black male. And, you know, it's.
So you had to discover this for yourself.
Like, how many of us, you know, now in 2015, so many of us come from one-parent homes where there's been a divorce, or someone is just not holding their end of the responsibility, and so you have teachers that are giving up on people like myself, and then you have police departments that give up on people like myself, and governments, and it gets to the point that you have to start to get into the room and say, I can speak as well as you.
Yeah.
I'm as smart as you, and I can earn as much money as you. So with that being said, we're on the same playing field. Let's negotiate.
So, I mean, is there a way, like maybe through your work or...
and we're a for-profit company, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea. We didn't want to just do nonprofit, because nonprofit is asking for money from somebody else.
Right.
For-profit, you have more control to dictate how things are run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess is there, because sometimes like when I look at like protests and like I may agree with what they're saying, but you know, I may agree with like the ethos, but I know like sometimes like protests, I see them on the screen, thank you, and I see them on the screen and like on TV, and I've attended a few, and they haven't left the 60s, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things where like I sometimes I see like if you're going to go scream at a bank or whatever, you could be right, but of course they're going to call the cops, and the cops are going to take the bank side.
Well,
so like, how do you mobilize people to go like to their city council, or like, you know, is there a way to do that?
Okay, without activism, you wouldn't have gotten rid of slavery.
Of course
Without
not.
activism, women would not be able to run for president and senator. Without activism, we would still have 6 and 7-year-olds working in
Absolutely.
What do we call those? The sweatshops.
Yeah.
So activism is an important part of community building.
Yeah.
It's a necessary part. Activism is not pleasant and it's not convenient. Activism is at times ugly.
Yeah, of course.
And it means bringing attention to something that's not getting the attention it deserves. Global warming is a perfect example. And but again, you're having to get into people's faces to say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be here. Even if you try to get rid of me, someone else will replace me.
Sure.
So you're going to have to deal with me or another me at some point.
Yeah.
And until you deal with me and deal with the matter that I'm bringing to you, I'm going to remain here and continue reminding you that I'm not happy with what you're doing. Okay. And if you don't do it right, then I'll do it myself.
Cool. And as I guess just to wrap up, because we don't have a lot of time, what is in the future for the Harlem Ambassador in terms of community building, or anything?
Well, we did a map. We did a walking map to Greater Harlem, and that basically covered 96th Street through the top of Manhattan, because there were all these maps that kind of cut off at 96.
Yeah.
Now I think the maps go up to 145. And we just said, okay, well, we don't need Midtown and downtown. Why don't we just do a map of Uptown? It's become a collector's item. We're doing an e-version of that map. We're doing a guidebook, kind of like a Michelin type guide, where instead of, it won't be as snarky as Yelp, but it will have a little tongue-in-cheek. We're working on an app, and also talking about doing some tours and some TV shows. So we want to cover all of this different type of media and just get our message out in a way that's entertaining and allows people to see that, you know, what's happening in Harlem is probably going to happen in Detroit in 15 and 20 years. It's already happening in Oakland, and I can name a bunch of other communities that are just, you know, the Trentons and the Newarks. You can't just keep pushing poor people out. Right. I mean, are we all going to move to the Poconos or something like that? And in some communities, that's what they do. They move them to the outskirts, the poorest areas, so they don't have to deal with them.
Okay, cool. So just go ahead and tell us where can we find you one more time?
We are doing Facebook. You can either do the Harlem Ambassador of New York, or you can do Greater Harlem 411. There are 2 different fan pages. One is for the company, one is for the product. We've also got Twitter, GR8TR, Harlem 411, one word. And on Instagram, we're the Harlem Ambassador.
Cool.
Yep, and we love to hear back from people. Give us your opinion, whether you agree, disagree. Debate is healthy, and that's how we grow.
Awesome. Well, that is a fantastic note to end the show on. Marquis Devereaux, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Great
brother.
dialogue.
You are so awesome.
You're awesome.
Please don't kill the styrofoam heads, though.
Yeah, I'll try not to, but they know what they did. So, good night, everybody.